change in my life is dramatic. I started this method at the back end of January. At that time, I was in a fairly desperate place. Yeah, so for some 20 years, I'd had problems with my stomach. I picked up something when I was in China, and I'd never really been able to get fully on top of that. I had celiac disease, as far as I could tell from my own trials. And I was living on a very limited diet. My diet was shrinking, and I was pretty desperate to find a way out of that trap that seemed to be happening. Looking at the microbiome and what I could do to make myself more robust, to make me a little bit healthier. And then I got diagnosed with an inoperable malignant cancer, which is like icing on the cake, really. I then went on to 7.5 weeks of radiotherapy. I was on hormone injections, and my PSA readings, which should have been going down, were actually still going up. And I still had the symptoms that I first noticed. So I was in a fairly difficult place at that time. And I heard Christopher Drake talking on a podcast, and that was what brought me into the method. I had looked at breathing before in the past, but this method made a lot of sense to me. I didn't really understand the biochemistry or the physics of what I'd been doing before. And this seemed to make a lot of sense. And I went on the training with Marcel, and she got me practicing the breathing. And the first thing I really noticed was I got an uptick in my energy levels. I went from getting my tools out to start a job, being so tired I didn't put them away without doing anything, to actually starting to achieve things. And that was the first thing I noticed. I think largely because I was driven by the cancer to make an improvement. I drove up my maximum pulses. I drove those up very rapidly, but I couldn't lift my control pulse. I couldn't get myself breathing naturally less. And it took me a few months before I was making progress in that direction. And then it was my niece who said to me, you know, standing back from the chaos of life and spending a little time improving yourself just makes a lot of sense. And that sort of flipped something in my mind. So instead of resenting the time I was putting into the training, I actually relaxed into it. And with that more tranquil mind, I found my control pulse went up very, very quickly. And that gave me a really big lift. Yeah? So if I look at the symptoms that have changed, I still don't know where the cancer is. It's sort of a bit invisible, and we don't measure it every day. But my weight has come down, back down to what I was when I was 30 years old. Yeah. Before my doctor's surgery had me on the pre-diabetic list. And at the last test, I was clean on every measure that they wanted to put on me. I've had on my ankle a recurring sore. At one time it was an ulcer, and it materialized from basically a reaction to iodine that I have an allergy to following an operation. And that hadn't cleared in some 15, 18 years probably. And that's gone away, and that's gone completely. The stomach problems I had managed with my diet to get clear of most of the medication, but I had to take indigestion medication every night. I could not sleep through the night, and that had been with me for 20 years. I haven't taken that for 5, 6 months now, not once. Yeah. So the change in my life is dramatic. A week or two back, I was just sitting in the garden and relaxing. I felt absolutely in touch with myself, with nature, in a way that I haven't been for 40 years. So this, from my experience, has been absolutely fantastic. So I cannot recommend it enough. We're all different. I can't say what will happen to you, but for me, it's been a journey that's really been worthwhile. Basically, I've always lived life in a fast lane. I was an angry young man until I was 71. This has taken the edge off that, which is really quite something. And one thing I forgot to say, and I still have trouble believing this myself, but I had a fairly serious motorcycle accident about 12 years back and broke both bones in my leg. And when the surgeon put me back together, he put my left foot on with about 30 degrees outboard direction. So I had what I used to call my 3 mile leg. It worked, but after 3 miles, the ankle would, the knee would ache incorrectly. Um, and you know, I have now got a 10 mile leg. I don't know how this has happened, but my foot has come back to pretty much being where it should be. And I think it must be the breathing, but I just don't know how it's happened. My experience has been absolutely fantastic. I cannot recommend it enough. Really. We're all different. I can't say what will happen to you, but for me, it's been a journey that's really been worthwhile.